Let's go to the magic of Skype and say hello to Funky Ben Askren. There he is, our old friend, Ben Askren himself. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Ariel?
I'm doing great. Is there anything you want to say to me, Ben, right off the top? Let's get it out of the way. Is there anything you just want to say to me?
Your face is very punchable.
Really? Be honest, Ben. You didn't think I'd ask. You called me out on Twitter. You said, quote, do your
I
job.
did.
I feel like an apology is in order here. You didn't think I'd do it. Let's hear it.
No, it was, see, Twitter, you never know what the connotations are. And it was more like a joking, do your job, Helwani, kind of thing. And I knew you were going to do your job. You're one of the best in the business.
One of. Okay, go on.
I thought it was an obvious question that a bunch of people should have asked him. And you actually asked him, and he gave an answer. But, Ariel, you could have dissected his answer a little bit more, because what I saw was, on the one hand, he says, I only want a fight that will boost my legacy. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so by this point, he's made a lot of money. He's got a lot of fame. If he hasn't made enough money or had enough fame yet, he's not going to. Okay. And then so on the second hand, he says, well, I would fight Ben Askren. He's definitely a top 3 welterweight in the world, but not enough people know him, which essentially means we're not going to sell enough pay-per-views. I'm not going to make enough money. But at this point in your life, are you caring about your legacy, which you just said in the last sentence, or are you caring about your pocketbook, which is what you're referencing now? And so I would have liked for you to say, well, George, which one of these is it? Is it your legacy or is it your pocketbook? Because if he says, hey, I just want to make money, I don't blame him for that. That's fine. He wants to make money. But don't say you care about your legacy and then you care about your pocketbook more later. It's one or the other. Just pick one. And frankly, I kind of went off before on UFC, and it's funny because your next guest, Demetrius Johnson, who I think you can make a very good argument is the greatest fighter of all time, regardless of weight class. But the UFC, what they struggle to do is market someone who's not just a stand and bang guy, And I referenced Demetrius as one. I mean, he's one of the most fantastic mixed martial artists ever. Another one that is like an obvious that this guy should be like a gigantic star to me is Stipe Miocic.
Mm-hmm.
Came in, he's defended the heavyweight belt more than anyone, and he's still just a regular guy. He goes to the freaking fire department to work, Ariel. I mean, this man can beat up anybody on planet Earth. He has a boatload of money, and the dude still shows up to work at the fire department. What is not the love? That guy should be selling 1 million pay-per-views every time. But the UFC marketing machine, they're set up for one thing, and the one thing is to market the stand and bang fighters, and they fail to have any recognition of how to market someone who doesn't fit in that little profile. And so for me versus GSP, I think if you learn to market me the right way, I'm undefeated. I'm an Olympian. I'm a damn American hero, Ariel. I'll sell 1 million pay-per-views if you're smart enough to market me the right way.
Right. I love this right off the bat. Let's refresh people's memories. Here's a quick snippet of what GSP had to say about you to add some context. And I like the way that you've already dissected it. And for the record, I was running out of time. I had him for 30 minutes. I mean, GSP doesn't have all day, so I couldn't do a whole other segment on that. But fair enough. Point well taken. Here's GSP talking about Ben Askren last week on the program.
If there's a guy that in my career I would have, for my legacy, that would have been good to fight, it would have been Ben Askren, because he beat everybody. He beat all the guys at Bellator. He beat all the champions outside of the UFC. But unfortunately, I think he has a fallout with Dana, and he never had a chance to fight in the UFC. And therefore, his stock never went to the value that is supposed to be at. You understand? Yeah. He's a guy who's extremely, extremely talented, very dangerous guy, but nobody knows who he is because he's never been exposed to the public. But he's very good.
So that's a snippet of GSP talking about you last week. I got the impression that he's intrigued by this, that he's thought of you, that he likes the idea, but then he talks about that stuff that people don't know. What was your initial reaction when you heard him talk about you?
Yeah, I thought he might play it off more. I thought, he might just say, oh, I don't really know him or whatever.
Yeah.
It was nice to hear him say the truth, because what I've heard from behind closed doors, that he does, he likes the skill set I bring. I mean, at the end of the day, in his heart, he's really a martial artist. And most martial artists appreciate what I've done in MMA. And while it may not have been the flashiest or the most creative. I brought a very unique skill set and I executed it in a fashion that very few have done before me, and I think very few will do after me. And there's obviously this myth that there's no good fighters outside the UFC when guys like Douglas Lima and guys like Andrei Koreshkov, they're freaking animals. And we saw the war that Rory McDonald and Douglas Lima had. It really looked like for a decent portion of that fight, it looked like Douglas Lima was going to, in fact, win that fight. And Rory McDonald is one of the most highly regarded welterweights in the world. And frankly, I destroyed Douglas Lima. At no point over the 25-minute competition was there a question of who the winner would be. At no point over the 25-minute competition was there a question that it would even be competitive slightly. And so when you see what I did versus Douglas Lima, and you see what Rory did, you can extrapolate the skill sets. And for those idiots who say, well, Douglas Lima was young then. Well, listen, when I fought Douglas Lima, I had 9 fights. Douglas had like 30. I've been in the cage 9 times, Ariel. I still had barely a damn clue what I was doing in there. So for those morons who say, well, it was early in Douglas's career, it was way earlier in mine. I had 9 fights. I didn't know what I was doing yet.
So, do you feel, after hearing his comments, after seeing some people weigh in on this, you clearly have some journalists on your side. Last week, Luke Thomas on the MMA Beat, I had an epiphany listening to him. I mean, he laid out a scenario of you being the quote-unquote heel, going into Montreal, just selling this thing, undefeated guy, finally getting your chance. You're coming in there for that one fight to take down the legend GSP. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It gives me goosebumps. I love these kinds of stories. Do you feel like there is some momentum to this? Like, is this actually a possibility, more so than when we talked back in November after the retirement fight?
There's absolutely momentum here, and I have been on record saying I will go to Montreal, Quebec, Canada in 2019. I will beat up GSP, and I will have somewhere around 20,000 Canadians booing me, and it will be a fantastic sight to see, Ariel.
Wait, so you actually think it will happen? You're predicting that it will happen?
Absolutely, yes.
Why are you so confident?
Man, that's just the way I work. I don't know how else to do it. I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. I've been saying some crazy, and then everyone says there's no way that's going to happen. Then all of a sudden it happens, and then I say something else crazy, and they say there's no way that's going to happen, and then it happens, and then I say, and so this has been the story of my life. I say I'm going to go do something, and everyone thinks I can't do it, and then I go do it. I mean, from the time I said when I was 15, it was when the internet forums were coming of age. There was all these people talking trash, and as a 15-year-old, I got on there and I said, I'm going to whoop this senior in high school. I was a sophomore at the time. I'm going to whoop him. And everyone said, you're insane. He's undefeated, blah, blah, blah. And the next week I beat him 21-8.
Wow.
And then, from winning a junior national title to winning NCAA titles to making the Olympic team to being an MMA champion, I predicted it all. I've called ahead of time because if you can't see where you're going, you're not going to get there. And I've known all along where I'm going. And sometimes the road takes a few curves that you didn't see, but you got to stay the path. And I have no doubt in my mind that this might take a little bit, but in 2019 I will fight Georges St-Pierre at the Bell Center, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's going to be sold out, and we're going to make a lot of money.
Now, why are you saying 2019 and not 2018? We're only 3 months into.
I think it's going to take time.
Okay,
it's going to take time. And
all
I
right.
said that when I retire. I said I would come back on one thing that would be to fight. I said the number one in the world, which GSP fits that category.
Now,
and
go ahead.
I retired at 30. I was 33, Ariel, so I knew I had a few years left where I'm not like sitting here doing nothing. I'm wrestling. I'm doing a few workouts here and there. And so I knew I had a few years where I wouldn't just get old like in 6 months.
There's a couple of stumbling blocks here, but can you clear something up for me? How could you take this fight? Aren't you still under contract with one?
You will see the light. I can't reveal all of the pieces to the puzzle yet, Ariel, but you will see it. I promise.
Could you at least confirm that they won't stand in your way, that you are free to take this fight if it is presented to you?
I will let you see all the pieces when it's time.
What are you talking about? How is that? I mean, that's a massive roadblock. For all we know, Dana White is probably watching this right now.
All you need to know is that in 2019,
yeah.
I am going to go to Montreal, and I am going to fight GSP in the Bell Center. You don't need to know all the intricate details of what steps are going to take place to make that happen. You just need to know that I told you it's going to happen, and it's going to happen. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, but there's
Just
people.
book it, Ariel. Just start working on it.
There's people that say things, like, oh, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. With, oh, Floyd Mayweather's going to fight in MMA. But a lot of these things are BS. So I just want to know if they're, we know what the potential roadblocks are from the UFC's perspective. I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
you're good. I don't want to see you get too excited and then have something like Chatri Sityodtong say, oh, wait a second, it's not going to go down.
Chatri would love to see me beat up GSP.
Okay. Now, what about discussions with the UFC? Have you thrown this out to them? Is there any interest? What can you
None.
tell
I
us?
don't think he is a dirtbag. I don't talk to him.
Why would you say that now? Can't we try to, mend the
That's a
fences?
fact. Listen, I have said that from the beginning. I have presented my argument. Watch the Rogan show. I laid out exactly how filthy he is, and it's not just a little bit filthy. It's all the way filthy. And I do not deal with people like that. I just don't do it. And so, like I said, there's a few pieces of these puzzles that got to come together, but you can bank on the fact that these pieces will come together in due time if you're patient enough.
All right. Have you ever had a conversation with GSP privately, behind the scenes?
I have texted through some intermediaries,
Oh,
but
re-
never direct one-on-one.
recently?
Not that I mean, post-retirement, but not that recently. Not like in the
Okay.
last week.
What'd you guys talk about?
Yeah. Disc golf. He's actually a big disc golfer. Got
Is
to beat
that
Kaiser, right?
yeah? Wait, I just want to now remember how you worded it. You're not saying that you're going to compete against him in disc golf, right? It's going to be an actual MMA fight. That's the prediction.
Yes, they're obviously not going to set up 18 baskets in the Bell Center and see who has less strokes on the disc golf course. I mean, if we want to do that the day after I beat him up, he gets marked up. We'll put some makeup on his face. We'll go out to the course. I'm picturing like May, June. It's nice weather. It's not like the middle of the winter
Yeah.
where it's terrible. We'll go out and throw a little bit.
Are you surprised at the interest in this fight? Did you think it would take a little
No,
long?
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I'm really not, because it's been so obvious what the UFC did to me. And like I said, I finally laid out the pieces in the Rogan interview of exactly how they did it. But it was so obvious that Dana stood behind all these lame ass excuses of he's not experienced enough, he's not good enough, he's too boring, blah 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 blah. They were all lies. Every single one of them was a lie, because he didn't want to tell the real story, and that's because he's a very petty man he's got $350 million and a gigantic ego, and he still has no confidence in self. He can't put the fact that I told him that they could do USADA testing and he said no, and then they did it a year later. He can't put that little detail behind him, and because of that little detail where I made him look bad, he has held a grudge ever since then, and he has withheld the fight that fans want to see. Fans want to see how I would have done in the UFC. And he hasn't been able to put that together because of a tiny little petty grudge over someone calling him a name. And it wasn't even a bad name. I called him a liar. And he was lying. So it was, in fact, true, Ariel. And he's been holding that against me since 2012. I mean, for God's sakes, man, you got $350 million. Don't you got anything better than hold a little bitter grudge? It's pathetic.
So you're saying that is the root of the issue, that sequence of events right there, that little back and forth about drug testing. That's why you think that he's stopping you from going to the UFC.
Well, I said there was other reasons, but I would say that's the start of it. And he is a bitter man. He's got a very fragile ego, very thin skin. And again, when you got that much money and you've done, and listen, he's accomplished a lot of things. That's factual. I will not take that away from him. But to have skin so thin, it's pathetic. It really is. And so the other reasons I said they didn't want a Bellator champion becoming a UFC champion. I think they in fact thought I would do that, because that was at the time when Bellator was getting on Spike and it was getting slightly more competitive between the organizations. And that would
But
have helped Bellator.
they've signed other Bellator champions, right? They've signed Eddie Alvarez, Will Brooks, Hector
Yeah,
Lombard.
I think they signed them. I think they signed Hector knowing that he wouldn't win a belt. And that was obvious. We're better than them. That was their champion forever. He can't be their champion here. And in Eddie, I think they were trying to take away a very important chess piece because Eddie did have a lot of popularity. But then the thing that happened with Eddie's free agency period is the matching clause got challenged and ended up in court.
Yeah.
And all the UFC fighters got to see what the UFC had offered Eddie, and
Right.
that made the UFC look bad because at that time he was making more than the contract they offered him was making more than I want to say like 95 to 97% of the fighters in the organization. So they're pissed that this new guy's coming over making more money than everybody, and they didn't want that to happen again. So there was a handful of reasons. Obviously, my style, not the most exciting, usually would not be a roadblock, but when you have these other things, I think that there's a lot of contributors, right? There's never just one factor or something. There's multiple factors.
Sure.
But I will go back. I think the beginning is me chipping at Dana's fragile ego with the comment of calling him a liar. And in fact, he was lying, Ariel. What I said on that show or on that tweet was, you can do USADA testing. You absolutely can. And he said, no, you can't. And the what he should have said was, at this point in time, it's cost prohibitive. We're a business. We need to make money. Listen, that's a great answer. That's totally true. It's
Yeah.
expensive to use USADA test.
Let me ask you, Tyron Woodley is a friend. He's a teammate.
Yeah.
You helped train. He is the champion. How would he feel about you getting this fight?
We haven't expressed it in discussed it in detail. If he gets the GSP fight, man, I'm really happy for him. But the other, and I think if I got the GSP fight, he would be happy for me. And the thing is, Tyron, regardless of who his next opponent is, he's the champion. He's making pay-per-view points, so he's making really good money. If he fights GSP, obviously the numbers will go up and he'll make more money. I'll be very happy. If I don't get the GSP fight and Tyron does, I'm very happy for him. If he doesn't get the GSP fight, I think once he comes back from injury, he's going to reel off a handful more title defenses and make a whole bunch of money.
So what's the game plan here? You sit back and wait. You're just gonna wait for them to come, or are you gonna actually go out and try to get this damn thing?
I never wait, Ariel.
Oh,
Never wait.
so what's happening?
All I do in life is attack. I just attack and attack and attack. And that was why I could never get why people said I stalled in fighting, because literally from the second one, I just walked across the cage and tried to grab you. And then once I got on top, I tried to punch you. I never stall in life. I attack. And just because you aren't seeing the attack right now doesn't mean it's not happening.
Oh, things are happening behind the scenes. That's what you're telling us. Damn.
I didn't tell you. I just said you can't see what's happening.
Okay, so to recap, 2019, it's going down in Montreal, maybe in the
May or
spring.
June. Buy your plane tickets now. Montreal's beautiful in June.
I listen. You don't have to tell me. Against Georges St-Pierre, Ben Askren, Georges St-Pierre, a dream match, if you will. Could I ask, how do you beat him? Have you envisioned this? Have you dreamed about this fight? Do you have? Yeah. What is it? What's the ending?
I would say here's what I think happens.
Okay. Please.
Because the one thing I have over him is I have the wrestling advantage and I don't get tired, and that's usually what he's relied on in the last, say, 10 to 12 fights or so. I think he's very tough to take down early. I think he's very tough, and he's probably gonna he's gonna win the striking battle. But one of the things, I never take a lot of damage. I just don't get hit a lot. That's what I'm good at. And over the course of the second and third rounds, I start to wear him down. My takedowns become more effective, and by the third and fourth rounds, I'm starting to dominate my top game. He's used to being on top. He can't get me off of top. If he does get a momentary glimpse of hope, I'm back on him, no problem. And in the fifth round, he mentally breaks and he says, I can't do this anymore. I've never been in this position in my life.
Wow.
And he lets me finish him.
Wow. Strikes? Submission?
Yes, TKO. He just says, I'm done with this shit.
Wow. What a story that would be. I could see it now. 1 hour, Bad Blood, the clip of Dana talking to the ESPN editor. Remember that? Yelling at him for having the guy with the afro on Sherdog. I mean, there is so much history there. It's just, it's rich. It's dripping with history. Let's make this happen.
Yes.
Ben, keep it up. Well done. I'm looking forward to it next spring in Montreal. I will without a doubt be there. And for the record, I accept your apology. It's all good. But never doubt me again, my friend. Never doubt a Helwani, all right? All right, Ben. All the best. There he is. Funky Ben Askren stopping by, learning the valuable life lesson. Never doubt a Helwani will always come through.